Today we're going to review multiplying decimals. Our goal is to solve problems involving the multiplication of decimals. Let's get started. First, let's look at a word problem example. Each piece of cardboard is 7/10 centimeters thick. If Jamie stacks 7 pieces of cardboard on top of one another, how thick will the stack be? Well, let's review that it's important to underline key pieces of information in a word problem. So we have the word each piece of cardboard is 7/10 centimeters thick. That clue word each is going to tell us that it's probably going to be a multiplication problem. 7 pieces on top of one another, how thick will the stack be, or the total? So in this problem, my strategy is going to be to multiply. So I need to multiply 7/10 times 7. Now we have a decimal multiplication problem. There's different ways to approach decimal multiplication. Some students just like to tally the decimal, so they'll just say, okay, so I have one decimal place, let me mark a check there to remind myself, or let me mark a tally mark to remind myself. And then you just multiply as if the decimal wasn't there. So you would just multiply 7 times 7. 7 times 7 is 49. Now we're not done. Because I have one decimal place, that means that I need to start at the very end or start at the decimal. In this case, we don't have a decimal, so I start at the very end and I move it however many decimal places there are. So if there were 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, I would move it 4 places. In this case, there's only one decimal on the top and none on the bottom, so I'm going to move it 1 place. So the stack would be 4 9/10 centimeters thick. So I hope that review helps you. Let's get started at some other examples. So let's look at this example. We have 1 429 thousandths multiplied by 3 82 hundredths. So again, I can count the spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I have 3 on the top and 2 on the bottom. So I have a tally totaling 5. Now I can multiply as normal, or I can just ignore the decimals until the very end. For some students, they like to rewrite the problem without the decimals, but don't forget that you're going to need to move it at the very end. And for some students, this just really helps them because that way they don't get addition or subtraction confused with multiplication of decimals because the rules are different. So let's go ahead and multiply. We have 9 times 2, which is 18, carrying the 1. 2 times 2, which is 4, plus 1 is 5. 2 times 4, which is 8. And 2 times 1, which is 2. Then I'm going to hold my spot with a 0 or an X. I'm going to go ahead and use an X because that reminds me that now I'm in the tens place. So I'm going to cross out my other numbers. Now I have 8 times 9. 8 times 9 is 72. I'm going to carry the 7. 8 times 2 is 16 plus 7 is 23. Carry my 2. Then I have 8 times 4, which is 32, plus 2 is 34. Again, carrying my 3. And 8 times 1, 8, plus 3, 11. And then I'm going to now cross out all those numbers on top. I'm now looking at the hundreds place, so I know that I'm going to have 2 zeros or 2 X's. I like to use the X's instead of the zeros just because that way students don't get it confused if there is a 0 somewhere in there. So, but either way that works for you is fine. 3 times 9 is where we start with. 27, carry the 2. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. 3 times 4 is 12. And 3 times 1 plus 1 is 4. So now I have all of my numbers taken care of. And remember, I've just been ignoring the decimals. I have my little tally as a reminder for the very end. So now I'm just going to add all my numbers together. I have 8 plus nothing, 5 plus 2 plus nothing, 8 plus 3 plus 7, 18, and 1 plus 2 plus 4 plus 8, 15, 1 plus 1 plus 2, I have 4, and 1 plus 4 is 5. And I apologize that these two kind of don't look that aligned, but make sure that you're being careful on how you align everything. So now I have this huge number, 545,878. Common mistakes is students will tell me that that's the correct answer. Now remember, I told you not to forget about those tally marks. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tally marks. So I'm going to start at the very end, and I am going to move that decimal 5 spaces. Let me do it in another color. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So my grand total is 5 and 45,878 hundred thousandths, which is a little bit of a mouthful. But that's my grand total. We had to move the decimal 5 places at the very end. Let's look at the last example. So when we have a problem like this, 726 and 0/10 multiplied by 8 and 3/10, there's more than one way we can approach it. We can either just tally twice and then multiply as normal, ignoring it, or because I have 0/10, I can actually drop that. If it was like 300ths, then I couldn't drop that 0. But because the 0 is at the end, I could just drop it and make it 726 multiplied by 8.3 or 8 3/10, and then move the decimal once. So it's up to you how you want to approach it. In this case, I want to model how you really should be rewriting problems, so I am going to model it this way. So I've rewritten the problem without that 0/10, and I have one place. And now I'm going to actually rewrite the problem again. 726 times 83, and I'm going to make a little note to move the decimal one spot at the very end. So you multiply as normal. I'm actually going to multiply over here. So we'll start with 6 times 3, which is 18. 3 times 2, which is 6, plus 1 is 7. And 3 times 7, which is 21. Now I'm going to cross that out, and I'm going to now approach the problem in the tens place, so I'm going to hold my spot with a 0 or an X. And I'm going to start with 8 times 6, which is 48. And then 8 times 2, 16, plus 4, 20. And 7 times 8, plus 2. So 56 plus 2 is 58. Now I'm finished, and I can add. If you had that extra 0 at the end, you would have just had an extra 0 and an extra X here. So it really isn't entirely necessary. So let's add. We have 8 plus nothing. We have 7 plus 8, which is 15. 2 plus 0, which is 2. 8 plus 2, which is 10, carrying the 1. And 1 plus 5, which is 6. Now I know I'm going to move the decimal one spot, so I'm going to start at the end and move it one place. So I have 6,025 and 8/10. If you did it with the 0, you would have had 80 hundredths, which is the same as 8/10. So I hope this has helped refresh your memory on how to multiply whole numbers and decimals. So I hope that review helped refresh your memory, and I hope that you're getting more comfortable as time is going on, reviewing all of those skills from previous grades. Good job.